Welcome to my Burning Crusade Classic Anniversary class picking guide. Before I talk about the positive and negative things about each individual class, then I would recommend you to just play whatever you want. I mean, there's no reason to choose the best DPS in the expansion and spend a lot of time leveling and gearing up your character just to figure out that rotation and gameplay is boring at max level. The first class I'm going to cover is the Rogue. The Rogue is amazing at max level when it comes to PvE raid content. You're doing decent in tier 4, it gets better in tier 5, and a lot better in tier 6 and Sunwell, where you hopefully get your glaives. But there's a big downside to the class itself. In raids, there are usually not many rogues, probably 1, maximum 2, so it will be difficult for you to get a raid spot, and also difficult for you to obtain your war glaives. And let's be honest, you shouldn't choose a class because you would like to get war glaives. You should choose a class because you would like to enjoy it at the beginning of Burning Crusade, and not at the end of the expansion. What I like a lot about the Rogue is that at the start of Burning Crusade, you can head into dungeons and solo farm chests. These chests are dropping green, rare and epic items, and it's such an insane amount of gold you can make in next to no time if you're also combining it with a profession like herbalism and mining, or even a combination of both. What about leveling up the Rogue? Well, it isn't going to be difficult, but it's going to be rather time consuming. The quickest way to level 70 is going to be by leveling as combat. As combat, you will unlock Blade Flurry at level 30, a 2 minutes cooldown where you're cleaving a nearby target. So every 2 minutes, you will also be able to pull 2 targets at the same time, making it a bit quicker compared to Assassination or Subtlety. What about PvP? Well, the amazing thing is that you can always be in stealth to avoid getting detected by other players. Your cooldowns is insane in 1 versus 1 situations, and you should be killing most classes. Yeah, even in 1 versus 2, where you can zap and blind another target while you're taking down your first opponent. How about arenas? Well, the Rogue function well with many different classes, including double Rogue. Yeah, this comp is disgusting, not only in the beginning when people don't have a lot of resilience, but throughout all of the different seasons, all the way up to Brutal Gladiator. Overall, it is an amazing class in Burning Crusade. It's great for gold making, it's fun in PvP, but the downside is PvE, where it might be difficult for you to find a raid spot. You can increase your chance of being invited into raids by playing another DPS class, the Hunter. The Hunter is insane from the beginning. You will be one of the best DPS in the game, not just at the start, throughout all of the expansion, and there are usually 2 to 3 Hunters in a raid party, so it will be easier for you to be invited. But I gotta be honest, the rotation isn't that fun. You're using one macro to do all the work, where you're using your steady shot and a kill command whenever it procs. And that's about it, unless you would like to make it a bit more difficult and play as melee weave. This is where you're doing your melee attacks in between your steady and auto shots. What about leveling up? Well, the Hunter is the easiest class to level up, especially as a new player. When it comes to leveling, it's also going to be one of the quickest classes, as you have never really got any downtime. The moment you need to sit down to drink or eat, you're just sent in your pet. I would also recommend you to practice melee weaving while leveling up, as it has a huge impact on your leveling speed at lower levels. What about gold making? Well, the benefit here is that you rarely has any downtime. The moment you go low on mana, you just swap to Aspect of the Viper, and meanwhile your pet continues to be an aggressive killing machine. Exactly why you're one of the best gold farmers in the open world. If you would like to get to high rating in arenas, then I would recommend you not to play as double DPS. You as a hunter is already a bit too squeezy, and you should be looking for a healer, such as a discipline priest, or even better, a resto druid. The synergy is just amazing, and what I also like is that our CCs doesn't share DR, so you can trap followed by spamming Cyclone. Next on the list, the Shaman. There's a big benefit if you would like to play this class and as Alliance, because in the pre-patch we can finally create our Draenei's, and those will be starting at level 1. This is an amazing opportunity for someone who is going to enjoy Burning Crusade for the first time, or just haven't been playing much of Anniversary. When all other players are starting at level 1, you won't be behind. The quickest way to level up your fresh character is definitely going to be as enhancement, where you're using either a one-hand weapon and a shield, or a two-hand at low level. Yeah, it's way quicker compared to Elemental, who is also struggling a lot with their mana. At level 40, enhancement becomes even better. finally we can equip 2 one-hand weapons at the same time, and as you can see, leveling up is going to be pretty easy. I'm not saying Elemental is useless, it's just not as quick all the way up to max level. As you get to max level, enhancement continues to stay relevant. People like to bring you into dungeons and later on into raids as you're doing pretty decent damage from tier 4 and all the way up to Sunworld content. It's also the exact same case as Elemental, and this specialization shouldn't be underestimated, but there is a downside, and it is the rotation. It gets pretty boring spamming Lightning Bolt and once in a while use a Chain Lightning. Not only can we play as melee DPS and spellcaster, we also got the opportunity to heal in dungeons and raids as Resto, and Resto are one of the best 5-man dungeon healers. Bloodlust and Heroism and your totems is just improving everyone's performance, and the moment there's either a lot of AoE damage, you can use your chain heal, and when there's going to be single target damage, you can swap to lesser or greater healing wave. An important thing to remember is that back in Burning Crusade Classic 2021, people brought many shamans into raid because they were insane with the Bloodlust and Heroism. But in Anniversary there's a big change. Now this buff is going to be raid-wide, so you won't need as many shamans. Therefore, there might also be a lower demand for your class. Nonetheless, we can play as 3 different specializations, where in Classic you are forced to heal. Now we can actually join as a DPS as well, and with dual specialization being in the game, it's easy for you to swap between whatever your raid party needs. Alright, so the Shaman is amazing for leveling and PvE content, but what about PvP? Well, in 2 vs 2 I like to play as either Enhancement or Resto. In my opinion, you should choose Resto if you wish to get to as high rating as possible. You got insane survivability and never really runs out of mana due to your water shield, and the moment you're playing together with either an Arms Warrior or Retro Paladin, you're going to be blasting through the different games. But what about Elemental? Well, it does work if you're playing together with another DPS who can assist you a lot with CCs and roots, such as a Mage. And even though Elemental is decent in 2s, then I prefer them much more in 3s or 5s, where we can stand still at the back to assist heal, and the moment we need to burst, we pop our cooldowns and finish off the target. My overall experience with the Shaman is amazing, but there is a big downside, which is gold farming. There isn't really any good gold farms in dungeons as a Shaman, and in the open world there's just classes doing so much better. With all of this being said, let's move on to the next class, the Warrior. The Warrior can be pretty boring to level up, at least at the start, where we are mainly just fighting one target at a time. It gets better when we unlock Cleave, where we can finally kill 2 targets at the same time, but be aware, the Warrior is also pretty squeezy, so after such a fight you might need to spend time reaching health either with bandages or food. Even though we might spend a lot of time reaching health, then the Warrior is rather easy to level up as long as you're not doing massive pulls. What about when we get to level 70? Is this class any good? Definitely. At max level, we can play as 2 different DPS specializations, Arms or Fury, and if you wish to tank, you can always swap to Protection. Protection got amazing survivability, which is why they're great as a main tank, but the moment there's many targets to focus on, it's struggling a lot more because our AoE threat isn't the best. This can be seen in dungeons when you're playing together with people who's doing a lot of cleave damage. All of a sudden, it might be difficult for you to keep aggro on all the different targets. How about Arms and Fury? Well, a Warrior is an insane DPS in this expansion, but there's 2 important things to be aware of. You're so gear dependent, so without good gear, you also won't be dealing a lot of damage. And another thing is that most raids are only bringing 2 or 3 warriors into their setup, therefore it might also end up being a bit difficult for you to get a raid spot, which is why I would recommend you to have Protection as your dual specialization, as it should be increasing your chance of being invited into a raid. What about PvP? Well, open world is going to be a bit more fun as we finally unlock our Spell Reflect, so against casters we're actually having a better chance, even though we might get rooted all the time. Nonetheless, having Spell Reflect is why the Warrior is so much better for open world PvP. But what about Battlegrounds? Well, those are a lot more fun if you join together with a healer who will constantly cleanse you from CCs and keep your health high, so you can just focus on killing nearby players. What about arenas? Well, in 2 vs 2 I don't like to play as double DPS. I feel like you're way too squeezy. It's better to join together with a healer, and all healers will be working together with a warrior. There's of course going to be positive and negative things about each individual class, but back in Burning Crusade Classic 2021, most high-rated warriors were playing together with a Resto Druid. There is of course a downside with this comp. The moment you get rooted, you're playing together with a healer who can't dispel you, and all of a sudden the other team might be able to reset the fight. In some cases, it could cause the game to easily last for half an hour. Else, you could always be signing up for 3s or 5s, as those games are usually a lot quicker. Before you roll a warrior, then remember, as this class you will always be fighting in melee, no matter if you decide to play as DPS or tank. What I'm trying to say is that those of you who hasn't got a lot of time to level up many different characters might all of a sudden regret you started a warrior, because you would like to try to heal or play as a ranged DPS, and then you'll be forced to level up a new character, or just continue on your warrior even though you don't enjoy it anymore. Another solution is just to roll another class from the start, for example a Paladin. As a Paladin we can play as melee DPS and tank just like the warrior, but we have also got the possibility to heal through the Holy specialization. Holy Paladins are insane in raid, as we can just constantly spam our main or off tank with Flash of Light and Holy Light. The biggest downside with this specialization is during fights where there's a lot of AoE damage, because as Holy you don't really have access to any AoE raid heals, and in 5-man dungeons where there's no other healers, it's easy to notice that you will struggle the moment your entire party is taking a lot of damage. How about our DPS specialization, Retribution? Well, in the beginning, so during tier 4 progression, you will struggle a lot when you compare your damage to many of the other DPS in the game. But every time a new phase is being released, you're just becoming so much stronger, and on some fights during tier 6 and later on Sunwell, you might be able to compete against the top DPS. There is one big downside with Retribution, and it is seal twisting. If you're not seal twisting, then you won't be able to perform great as Retribution. Luckily, there's many guides out there teaching you how to do so, but also a weak aura that lets you know when you got a seal twist. What about our last specialization, Protection? In my opinion, it is the best 5-man tank out there. You got amazing threat, survivability, and useful buffs to your entire party, and because our AoE threat is so high, it's just amazing as a spell cleaving group. What about when we step into raids? Well, you can easily tank those, so don't worry. But in fights where there's going to be many adds, it's just superior to bring a Protection Paladin because you're doing way better compared to a Feral Druid or a Protection Warrior. Protection Paladin is obviously not good in PvP, or at least not in arenas. Here you would like to play as either Holy or Retry. Retry is insane in 2 vs 2 when you're going to seal twist and play together with a Shaman, where you benefit from the Windfury totem. In some cases you might even be able to almost one-shot another player because everything procs at the exact same time. Another solution is to play as Holy. Holy are doing well together with many different DPS in the game, but most high-rated players prefer to play together with either a Warlock or a Warrior. Else you could also play as a Shogadin. As a Shogadin you spend most of your points into the Holy Tree, so you're still a healer, but your gear is focused more on improving your spell damage, which makes you able to finish off a target a lot easier because you have got access to a huge burst. And this is insane when you're playing together with another character who can also do a huge burst, either a Pump Power Mage or a Frost Mage. One of the biggest benefits about the Paladin, or at least about the Protection Paladin, is farming lower level dungeons. Here we can make a ton of gold, even though there is going to be new implementations in Anniversary that makes it a bit more difficult to farm gold, then it is still going to be a possibility, and we can easily make more than 300 gold an hour. How about leveling up this class? Well, it isn't that fun to begin with. You will mainly just be doing auto attacks and a judgment, and that's about it. The best specialization for solo leveling is going to be Retribution, but you could always swap into Protection at around level 40 or 50, as we're getting important abilities that makes us able to start leveling up more efficiently, but Retribution will still be the quickest to 70. If you're watching this video before the Burning Crusade release, then remember in the Burning Crusade pre-patch, we can create a Blood Elf Paladin. So this is a big benefit as someone who is going to play Burning Crusade for the first time, or haven't played Anniversary for a long time, because you won't be behind when everyone else is starting at level 1. So should you be playing a Paladin in the Burning Crusade, you are going to be an insane gold farmer. All 3 specializations are working in PvE, where in classic level 60 raids you are pretty much also forced to be a healer. In PvP they're insane as Holy and Retry, and I gotta be honest, it's just a fun class to play. Another class I find fun to play is the Druid. As a Druid you can play as all the roles in the game. So melee and ranged DPS, healer and tank. Yeah, one class capable of doing everything. In other words, the ultimate class for a casual player or someone who would just like to focus on one character. Now some of you might also be curious, when you got the opportunity to play as 4 different specializations, is any of those going to be any good? Definitely. In my opinion, the Feral tank is going to be the best tank in raids. You got insane avoidance and you're pretty much also unkillable. What I like about the Feral DPS is that we won't just be using 1 or 2 buttons. You gotta stance, and you gotta apply your Fairy Fire and do different rotations. And this is why it's also a fun class to play, because it's actually requiring skills. The moment you master a Feral Cat DPS, you will quickly notice how you're outperforming other cats in the game. And Resto Druid is just an insane healer throughout all of the expansion, not just for raids, but also one of the best healers in 5-mans. You never really run out of mana, you got an insane AoE heal, we got HUDs, and of course innovate for whenever you or another party member is low on mana. And not to forget Rebirth, the only class able to rest someone else mid-fight. Yeah, this combat rest is so insane, also for 5-mans and when you're raiding. But there's a negative thing about the Druid. You haven't got a normal rest, so the moment there's a cooldown on your Rebirth, you won't be able to resurrect your remaining members. What about balance? Well, you shouldn't expect to ever be on top of the damage meter, but you will be doing decent throughout all of the expansion. You're providing your raid with Innovate, Rebirth and your Mooncan Aura, but sadly the rotation isn't that fun. It will mainly be just to spam your Starfire and once in a while reapply your damage over time abilities, so Moonfire and Insect Swarm. What about balance in PvP? Sadly, it isn't really that good in 2 vs 2. Some people like to use a build called Dream State, where you're doing a bit more healing, but still got the opportunity to swap into your Mooncan form and continue bursting down a target. But overall, Boomkin isn't doing that great in 2 vs 2. It's doing way better in 3 vs 3 when you're just playing together with a healer who can constantly spam heal you while you're bursting down a target together with another DPS. Those of you who prefer to play 2 vs 2 should consider playing a Resto Druid instead. It's way easier to get to high rating, for example together with a warrior. Another solution is to play Feral. Feral is insane together with a rogue in 2 vs 2, and this comp can get to so high rating as you got insane burst and CC. What about leveling up the class itself? In the beginning it is boring until you unlock your bear and cat form. The benefit of bear form is that you got a lot of defense but still some decent damage. Useful for more difficult fights, for example an elite. As cat you got less defense but a lot more damage. And if you wish to level efficiently or well quickly to 70, then I would recommend you to level as Feral, as you're not as gear dependent compared to for example something like a balanced Druid, and Resto Druid is mainly just for dungeon farming. Now that I'm already covering Feral, Feral is also the best for gold farming in the beginning of Burning Crusade. You can skip through all the creatures and static halls and move to the last boss in the dungeon. This boss is dropping 2 rare items and it ends up being quite a bit of gold every single hour. You just gotta heal yourself whenever it's using Arcane Explosion and go back into bear form. So once again, is the Druid worth playing in the Burning Crusade? Definitely. You're one of the best classes in PvP, yeah definitely S tier, and you're also doing great as many different specializations in PvE. Not to forget, we can play as melee DPS, spellcaster, healer and tank. What's not to like as a casual player who doesn't have a lot of time to level up many different characters? Moving on to the next class, the Priest. Shadow is still our primary DPS specialization, and it is getting a bit better in the Burning Crusade. Sadly, our damage isn't going to be a lot better, but we're going to provide our raid with useful things, such as mana regeneration and health regeneration. So, many raids would like to bring at least one Shadow Priest, but not too many, as your DPS won't really be that great. What about healing? Well, there's benefits of Discipline and Holy, or a combination of both. But I would recommend you to have dual specialization so you can always swap in between your Holy or Discipline build, simply because there will be different fights where you might need pain suppression from Discipline and other fights where you need more AoE healing, so where you need Circle of Healing from the bottom of the holy specialization. What about healing in PvP? Well, then you should be playing as Discipline. Holy isn't really great. Discipline way better with more survivability, quick master spells, and overall just the opportunity to assist with a bit more damage. In 2 vs 2, I like to play with either a rogue or a mage. You can also find a feral druid, and in some cases enhancement shaman might also end up working, but the best comps is definitely going to be discipline priest and rogue, or discipline priest and mage. Shadow is also insane in 2 vs 2. You should be playing together with either a mage or a rogue. In this case, you could for example be using a fear into a sap or a polymorph. And remember, as Shadow, you have also got your silence, which is pretty insane when you need to set up a kill. What about leveling up the priest? Well, in the beginning, I always level as a combination of discipline and shadow. The reason being that in the discipline tree, we improve our damage done by our wand, and we get a lot better mana regeneration. And 5 points into the shadow tree for spirit tap increases our mana regeneration even further. I know you would be spending points into spirit tap as full shadow, but then again, you won't be benefiting from a lot of the other talents in the discipline tree. Another thing to be aware of is that as full shadow, you won't be using your wand, which is why you will quickly run out of mana when you're constantly spamming spells. This won't be the case as the other build. You should consider respeccing into shadow at level 40 when we unlock shadow form, else you gotta make sure you're doing it at level 50 when we unlock a new damage over time ability, Vampiric Touch. Shadow is going to be the quickest from now and all the way up to 70. Sadly, the priest isn't a good gold farmer in the Burning Crusade, at least not when you compare yourself to other classes being able to boost people through lower level dungeons, or other classes who can solo high level dungeon bosses or farm chests. Yeah, it won't really be a possibility with this class. One of the best gold farmers in the game is the Mage. You can either AoE in the open world, in dungeons, boost people, or do single target kills where you're farming different things in the open world. What about leveling up? Well, leveling a mage isn't going to be difficult at all, and it is rather quickly one of the quickest classes to get to 70. You can level as all 3 specializations, Frost, Arcane, and Fire. Arcane and Fire is single target, where Frost got the opportunity to AoE with Blizzard. This is exactly why this specialization is the quickest to 70. There's many quests and open world locations where you can farm efficiently this way, and the moment there's too much competition in the open world, you just swap to dungeon farming and do dungeons with a spell cleaving group, in other words, together with warlocks and mages. What about raiding as a mage? Is it going to be any good? In the beginning, so during early tier 4 progression, Frost and Fire are definitely my choice, but the moment you start getting better gear or progress into tier 5, Arcane becomes a lot better. However, if you're playing as Arcane, you will most likely also need a Druid to cast Innervate on you, at least during longer fights, else you'll run out of mana, and this is where Fire or Frost would just outperform you. But those of you who can get Innervates should definitely be playing as Arcane. Many people also like to bring this class into the dungeon setup, as mages are providing polymorph, nice damage, buffs, and of course the mage table. These biscuits restores a lot of health and mana, and it ends up saving your party a lot of gold, as they don't need to buy their own food or water. Alright, so now that the mage is amazing for leveling and for PvE content, it probably won't surprise you that it's exactly the same in PvP. The mage is just working so well together with many other classes in the game, especially with a priest, druid, and rogue. And the amazing thing is that you won't have to play with a resto druid or disciplined priest to get to high rating. No, feral druid, dream state, or shadow priest are working just fine. It's also the exact same case in 3 vs 3. Many weird comps are honestly working, yeah, even double mage and rogue, but the best comps is still going to be RMD or RMP, so rogue mage druid or rogue mage priest. Even though there's many benefits of choosing a mage in the game, then there's also a big downside, and it is that you will always be forced to play as a spellcaster no matter the specialization you choose. So the moment you would like to try melee DPS, healer, or tank, well, then you will be forced to level a new character, and it is the biggest downside with the mage. The last class I will cover in this video is the Warlock, and the Warlock will always be forced to play as DPS, just like the Mage, Rogue, and Hunter. Nonetheless, it is an insane class. We have got way better AoE abilities, you're going to be one of the best damage dealers in PvE content, and in PvP, it's exactly the same. Rogue, Warlock, and Resto Druid are amazing for 3s, and in 2 vs 2, Warlock are working with a Resto Druid and Rogue. In fact, it's working together with many classes as you got insane survivability, self-healing, and CC. But overall, most high-rated Warlocks will be playing with a Resto Druid or a Rogue. In my opinion, the Warlock is a ton of fun in PvP, but when it comes to PvE, yeah, then you might be one of the best damage dealers in your raid, but the rotation is rather boring. You will mainly just be spamming one spell, and it's going to be Shadow Bolt. Another thing to be aware of is that Destruction is usually outperforming Demonology and Affliction, so the moment you get bored of the rotation, you also got to get used to a new specialization, and those won't be performing as great compared to Destruction. That being said, Affliction and Demonology shouldn't be underestimated in the Burning Crusade. On some fights, they can outperform Destruction and still be one of the best damage dealers in the game. Besides being a great damage dealer, then the Warlock is an insane gold farmer as well. You never struggle with mana or health, as you can always use Life Tap to convert health into mana. And the moment you need health, you just use your Drain Life, and whenever your demon needs health, you use Health Funnel. Therefore, you're going to be an insane gold farmer, as you've never really got any downtime where you need to sit down to drink or eat food. Like it wasn't enough, then leveling up a Warlock is going to be the exact same. There won't be a lot of downtime as you just send in your demon to tank, you apply some damage over time, cast a Shadow Bolt once in a while, and drain life. Yet another benefit is that your demon will be so strong, so unlike many other classes, then you might be able to solo some of the different elites in the open world. This makes this class amazing for those of you who wouldn't like to group up with other people, but just level by yourself from 1 to 70. Alright, so at this point I've covered all the different classes, but what is going to be the best for the Burning Crusade? Like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, you shouldn't choose a class because a content creator or a tier list is telling you to. No, you should choose whatever you find the most interesting. That being said, if I only had one choice myself, I would probably choose a Druid. The reason being that we can play a spellcaster, melee DPS, tank, and healer. So basically everything just by leveling up one character. Amazing for a dead gamer, a casual player, or someone who don't want to spend a lot of time leveling up many different characters. It's rather easy to level up, and in the beginning of Burning Crusade, you can make around 300 to 400 gold an hour by solo farming static halls on your own. It's one of the best classes in arenas and definitely placed in the S tier. Yeah, Resto and Feral Druid being insane in 2s and 3s, and many high-rated teams, so Gladiators and Rank 1s, were either playing a Druid themselves or had one in their team. When it comes to PvE, then Resto and Feral Tank is S tier. Yeah, they're just good throughout all of the expansion. But sadly, Feral DPS and Boomkin is never going to be on top of the damage meter. So if your plan is to be the best damage dealer in the Burning Crusade, then you shouldn't be playing a Druid. Instead, choose a Hunter, Warlock, or Mage, as those are usually competing for top 1 DPS in the game. That being said, they can only play as DPS, so the moment you regret not being able to tank or heal, well, then you will also need to level up a new character. Whenever I'm leveling up a new character, then I also like to follow a leveling add-on, and the one I'm using right here I will leave in the description below the video, but it's absolutely insane. There's an arrow guiding you in the direction you gotta head to, the quest text has been shortened so it's easy to understand, there's numbers indicating in what order you will need to do the different quests, and those will also be shown on your map. Overall, it is just a nice add-on, and there's a free version you can download by using the link below the video, and also a full version that works all the way up to max level. This includes a dungeon leveling guide, reputation farms, attunements, and other important things to be doing on your journey to level 70. If you're using the link below the video, then you will also be getting a discount, and this discount will help me as a content creator so I can spend more time on new videos and guides. If you would like to see more useful Burning Crusade guides, then I would recommend you to check out my channel and also subscribe, as I'll soon be publishing a lot more you definitely don't want to miss. As always, thanks so much for watching and have an amazing day. Peace.